All right, Priya, all yours.
We're
Okay.
going to talk about a quick intro to the technology today, talk to you a little bit more about the impact and Copilot. I'm really approaching this from an engineering perspective, so it's going to be a little different flavor, and hopefully you'll walk out with some good learnings that you can apply on your daily jobs and so on and so forth. So I wanted to start off with something a little bit light, where you start to see in the early days of just ChatGPT, when one asks mathematical questions, generally it was not as great at answering math questions and very easy to confuse. In this particular joke, basically the end user basically says, "My wife says it's this number. This is the right answer," and so and provides the Chat GPT a little bit more training on "my wife is always right." And there we have it. ChatGPT says, if your wife says it's 8, then it must be 8. So I just found that a little funny, but it really makes us think a little bit more about, when you think about generative AI and specifically, you know, uh, this aspect of ChatGPT, what do we know it to be useful for, and where would we not want to use this technology? So let's just go through that for a minute. Usually, you're going to find that it's great for things like text completion. A lot of what you're seeing is probability based. It's good at retrieving facts or comparing factual information. If you feed it different types of data that are not validated, authoritative, for example, it can be garbage in, garbage out. And so this is always going to be an onus on us to make sure, that we're feeding it the right information. We've seen this in our previous presenters as well in their content. Generally, you'll find questions, answers it's great at. It's good for translation, reading comprehension, or even text summarization, and writing assistance, of course, generating new content. There's areas where we need to be careful of using, generative AI. We need to keep an eye on fairness and bias. Things like internet location access. If we have long input outputs, that can be sort of concerning. So make sure you take a moment to look at your input output tokens and have limits on your input tokens. Because if you end up getting some sort of an attack, then you need to be prepared and have those fail safes in place. Similarly, long prompt histories. Generally, I would also say generic, output and plagiarism is where I would kind of take extra caution. I'm not going to drain this next slide because many of our previous presenters have talked about this already. But essentially, one of the things that I would maintain here is, yes, when we think about artificial intelligence, it's been around since the 1950s and 60s, right? Where we started to explore the possibility of creating machines that could think like humans. And in that time frame, a lot of AI research focused on symbolic AI, which basically involved creating symbolic representations of knowledge and using them to solve problems. You see that a lot now with generative AI, because that's really what it's doing. And that's where vectors and embeddings really come into the picture. So, just something to keep in mind for today's purposes. What I'm going to do is, just highlight here that generative AI basically sits on top of other areas of AI like unsupervised learning, supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. And it really relies on the capabilities of those models to extract useful features from the data and use that for learning. The underlying probability distribution of the data that's used for generating new examples. That being the case, I wanted to share a little bit more about some of the work Microsoft's been doing in regards to the impact of LLMs. Now, the New Future of Work was an initiative dedicated to creating solutions for the future of work that is meaningful, productive, and equitable. This began during the pandemic in response to the urgent need to understand remote work practices. When many people returned to the office, the focus actually shifted to supporting the hybrid work transition. Now the work practices are changing once again, and this time the driver is actually technology, specifically artificial intelligence. And so in this case, what we found is LLMs can substantially reduce a lot of the noise and actually improve productivity on some of the common information work tasks. And then, I'll just be very quick about this. We have also looked at the time savings. In this case, you're looking at, time savings of anywhere between 26% to 73% based on task. And that's the most important thing that you should leave here with is it's all task based. It's not a Turing test. It doesn't apply to everything. And so that's really why task completion is very important to look at when you are designing your generative AI application. I would also say that LLMs are actually helping a certain category of users the least experienced. And so that is something that we need to think about, how we're able to include micro productivity practices to augment human capabilities through new task management capabilities and strategies. Now, for those who are software engineers, again, a lot of what we're seeing is task dependent. Not all of the different areas that require reasoning is the LLM doing great on. And we have to keep in mind that this is supposed to be not just artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence, where humans and their capabilities are augmented through the process. And we can also use LLMs to audit and check some of the outputs that the LLM is creating itself, as well as traditional testing techniques. Now, one really important item here that I'd like to mention, and this is where I'll end the new future of work report results, is what we found in using generative AI. A lot of the end users decided on a different value proposition than we've had in the past. If you remember, in the 90s, we were, there was .com, companies popping up everywhere, and there was a certain amount of time that it took for the industry to get to standards that, hey, I expect my web browser, my web page to render within milliseconds. And that's what we got used to. It's that instant gratification. Now, what's happening is that entire paradigm is almost being reevaluated, as now users are saying, hey, if the LLM is able to give me a more contextual answer that I can use in my job, I'm willing to wait 5 extra seconds for it. And so the contract that users made with technology companies has now changed to a certain extent. So just some interesting insights. Now, this next section, I'll go a little bit deeper into the Copilot technology. For those who are interested in learning a little bit more, I would highly suggest you take a look at Cobus Grayling's post. He has a really good article on a short history of chatbots that will give you a lot of interesting insights. Generally, when you look at Copilot, it's a conversational chat interface that lets you search for specific information, generate texts, or images. You can have text in the form of emails or summaries, and it can also create images based on the text prompts that you write. Obviously, it's available in different form factors. It could be web, it could be on your Windows device, soon enough on your mobile phone as well through Onyx. And as Chadab mentioned, you can actually build your own Copilot using the Copilot Studio. It'll basically let you program custom versions of Copilot that incorporate custom data to deliver predictable responses within conversations. I did want to take a minute, though, to demystify, how should we think about Copilot versus generative AI? There are some unique differences there. One is you have the ability to have voice input and spoken responses in addition to typing text. You can also upload images to Copilot. You have a choice of style to get your answers. So when you ask Copilot to write text for you, you can basically choose the style of response, with options being, maybe more creative, more balanced, more precise. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And then obviously you get, links to your sources. So you may, for example, get a full answer, and then you also get further information that's different than normal chatbots. You also can choose to, elect your choice of AI model if you so wish. And then, of course, you can also get image generation. So those are some things to think about. The other aspects would be, is this domain specific or not? How is knowledge management being done? Do we have a message abstraction layer? Do we have dialogue and logic management? And is there, as Shada mentioned, an NLU engine, a natural language understanding engine, which really understands the intents and entities. That's where the GraphRag can help. I'll just take a couple more minutes to discuss Copilot, specifically the components that are used to build it, how it works. And this is specific to our Microsoft 365 application, but a lot of the learnings here you can apply to any kind of custom Copilot you may desire. But essentially, the way a Copilot would work is the Copilot receives an input prompt from a user in an application. It could be Word, it could be PowerPoint, it could be any kind of application. Copilot then pre-processes the input prompt through an approach called grounding, which improves the specificity of the prompt and makes sure it's based on some level of ground truth or facts to help you get the answers that are relevant and actionable to your specific tasks. That relevancy was different when it came to traditional software engineering. Now, when you look at the purpose of Copilot, a lot of its value is dependent on relevancy and accuracy. The prompt can also include text or input files or any content that is discovered by the Copilot itself. So it's content discovery as well as intent discovery that's involved. And then the Copilot will send this prompt to the LLM for processing. The Copilot only accesses the data that the individual user has existing access to. For example, it might be based on existing Microsoft 365 role-based access controls. The Copilot then takes the response from the LLM and pre-processes it. This post-processing includes, I meant to say post-process. So the Copilot takes the response from the LLM and post-processes it, which basically includes any kind of grounding calls to the Microsoft Graph, responsible AI checks, security, compliance, privacy reviews, and command generation. And then Copilot returns a response to the app where the user can review and assess the response. Now we're going to refer to the user's prompt and Copilot's response to that prompt as the content of interactions. And the record of those interactions is the user's Copilot interaction history. So that is also maintained, that chat history and how interaction has been conducted. Now, Microsoft Copilot generally will iteratively process and orchestrate sophisticated services behind the scenes to help produce results that are relevant to the organization because they're contextually based on your organizational data. One of the ways that we're able to do that is through the semantic index. When we have enhanced interactions with individuals and company data via the Microsoft Graph, we can create a new index. The semantic index is an improvement basically to the Microsoft 365 search that lays the foundation for the next generation of search and Copilot experiences. Again, always respecting security and policies in the Microsoft Graph so that when a user issues a query either directly via search or in the Microsoft Copilot, it's always in the security context of that user. And the only content that a user has access to is returned. I'm happy to go through further details for those who would like it, but I wanted to just walk you through high level how the Copilot architecture works. I'm not sure if we actually have time today, but perhaps next time I'd love to take everybody through, you know, the basics of GPT, what it means, what is a prompt, what's completion, how is it trained, how is learning and training done, how is it called, and what are some of the models that we can leverage. So I think that was exactly, I just timed it, 15 minutes. So
No, that was
hopefully that
great.
was helpful. Thank you.
And then